Garret Wing from American Standard Canine is a police dog trainer who I believe will rebut the Commonwealth's witness Crosby, who is a dog behaviourist. Speaking of dog behaviour, ours has just started marching the perimeter to bark at everything that moves and doesn't move. Anyway, back to Garret Wing. He's an 18-year law enforcement veteran, a professional dog trainer, and he's the owner and founder of American Standard Dog Training, DIYcanine.com, and other businesses involving professional dog training. His YouTube channel has been online for 5 years prior to Officer John O'Keefe's death. 9 months ago, he started another YouTube channel in his own name, where he delves into riveting personal stories of police canine deployments, military missions, and dog training adventures. In short, he's equally matched to the Commonwealth's dog behaviourist expert. Breenan says he has the right to put him through a Dalbert Lanigan hearing. However, as a rebuttal expert to his own expert, Breenan is reaching hard, like stretching the truth into a yoga pose it was never meant to be. His claim about a right to a Dalbert Lanigan hearing for Garret Wing as a rebuttal witness is misleading at best, and borderline courtroom theatrics at worst. The Commonwealth doesn't have an automatic right. It's at the discretion of the judge based on whether Wing's testimony introduces novel scientific principles or questionable methodology. But Wing is a rebuttal witness. He's offering testimony based on training practices and describing real-world observable phenomena. This isn't cutting-edge neuroscience, it's hands-on expertise. And his role is simply to counter or clarify what the opposing side's expert claims. If Canoni had let the Commonwealth's dog behaviourist theories through the door, it's hypocritical and legally shaky to demand that a practical canine trainer face a higher bar. In short, it was Canoni's discretion, not Breenan's right. It was just more posturing by Breenan, obviously. But some commentary appears to be critical of Garret Wing's appearance on Melanie Little's YouTube channel, suggesting somehow that Breenan might win the day in cross-examination by mentioning that. I want to get into that a little deeper. But the main question I had is, can Wing provide props when he testifies? Because, he has the fake arms that he wears when he's training, which are the perfect visual aids to demonstrate to the jury what kinds of injuries dog bites leave behind. So after some research, I find that Garret Wing absolutely can introduce training props if the court allows it as demonstrative evidence. The court being Auntie Bev, who seems to have an issue with anything that demonstrates actual evidence. But in a black and white scenario, Garret Wing can use those props as demonstrative evidence if he's testifying as an expert witness on canine bite training and behaviour, and the prop is used in training, reflective of standard practices, and he personally uses it. Massachusetts Rules of Evidence, under demonstrative aids, says that they can be used to illustrate or clarify the testimony of a witness, so long as it's relevant to the expert's testimony, it isn't misleading or unfairly prejudicial, and the expert lays foundation. For example, I use this exact model to train police dogs. Then it would be allowed. If the sleeve or fake limb shows teeth marks, wound depth, spacing between punctures that match or mirror the photos of Officer John O'Keefe's injuries, then Wing's prop becomes the most powerful rebuttal imaginable to Crosby's testimony, especially if the Commonwealth tries to deny Chloe could have caused the wounds, or leans on some kind of academic theory rather than real-world training evidence. Obviously, Canoni will try to exclude it under Rule 403 if she believes it's too graphic, too prejudicial, or not substantially similar to O'Keefe's actual injuries. But the more closely the sleeve resembles the wounds, the less grounds she has to block it without looking obviously biased, and she's racking those up by the dozens. Outside of her bias discretions, those props are textbook demonstrative evidence. If you haven't seen Garret Wing's demonstrative sleeve and how we might use it on the stand, you can visit the link in the description to Melanie Little's channel, where she invited him on to speak on his experience. I would suggest that since Breenan didn't cry about it, Garret Wing's possibly not going to use the demonstrative sleeve, but it is interesting nonetheless. Now, speaking of his appearance on Melanie Little's channel, I suspect this is where Breenan's probably going to cry the hardest, most likely on cross-examination. He's most likely to yell, "Bias! Prejudicial! Media contamination!" He'll probably say in his Weasley little voice, "Your Honour, this expert has already expressed a public opinion before being qualified to testify. That undermines his objectivity." Or some similar argument that he's been making about ARCA. And so let's have a listen to how Garret Wing may respond if the Commonwealth comes at him with these kinds of attacks to undermine his credibility.
Where I got involved in this case, again, I don't normally even watch the news. I'm too busy running a business and training dogs to really pay attention to this stuff. But about 4 months ago, an attorney named Melanie Little, who has her own YouTube channel, highly recommend you check it out. It's called Attorney Melanie Little. She has about 50,000 plus subscribers. She reached out to me via email, I believe, and said, "Hey, Garrett, with your background and experience, would love to have you on our show." And she said, "I'd really like to get your opinion on one thing in particular, and that is a photo or a couple of photos of the injuries of a now deceased Boston police officer." Again, I haven't been following it. I might have heard some headlines. Normally don't get involved. It's too much hype and hoopla for me. But then when I'm asked about dog bites, now my ears perk up. And so I went on her show, and we'll show a little highlight, a little clip of that, about 4 months ago. We talked about my background and my experience, kind of qualified myself, if you will, as an expert in the field. And ultimately, we looked at the injury of John O'Keefe's right arm, taken posthumously at the medical examiner's office. And what you see in these photos, which again we're going to show shortly, you see a series of lacerations, somewhere in the area of like 6 to maybe a half dozen to a dozen vertical striations, lacerations, everywhere from above his elbow all the way down near towards his wrist. And according to the prosecution, according to the state, they're saying that the deceased received these injuries as a result of a car crash, as a result of a vehicle on pedestrian accident or crash. Again, normally I don't get involved in this stuff. It doesn't concern me. This happened up in Boston, nowhere near me. Got too many other things to worry about. But then I found it very weird when we're looking at the injuries. First and foremost, those are not injuries you would see, these vertical striations, these lacerations, not abrasions, right? Now, if you want to get technical, an abrasion is like road rash. An abrasion is like if you were riding your bike and you fell off and the asphalt abraded your skin. Well, that's very different than the injuries this individual sustained. John O'Keefe had lacerations, multiple ones, and mild puncture wounds or minor puncture wounds. Much, much more in line with what I've seen in my background and experience as a police canine handler with dog bites. And not just one dog bite, a series of dog bites, multiple dog bites. Again, this is very strange for me to do this. Normally we're talking about dog training and how to get your dog to be better behaved and all of that, but I just cannot look away on this one. Once I got involved 4 months ago and gave my recorded testimony, if you will, by no means was I in the trial, but when I went on Melanie Little's show and she showed me this photo and I started doing some more research, I now understand what everyone's fascination and involvement in this case is.
So that's how Garret Wing is likely to respond to Mr. Breenan throwing his binky at him. It's likely to land better with the jury that he volunteered to give testimony, just as Dr. Russell did, because they could both clearly see that those were dog bites on Officer John O'Keefe's arm. And while Bev will likely try to keep either of them from saying that they came to the rescue because he's a police officer, Mr. Breenan already opened that door when he spoke with Peggy O'Keefe. As EDB would say, You can't put the shit back in the horse, Mr. Breenan.